Welcome to this very special webinar brought to you by Tax Sutra and Dhruva Advisors. Always a pleasure to be collaborating with the crack team at Dhruva Advisors, and the speakers for today, experts in their fields, and the topic for today, investigations, Mr. Dinesh Patwari and Mr. Sandeep Bhalla. Before handing it over to them, I'll just set a brief context. The topic is investigations in the tax and allied laws in the digital age. So underline that. So it's not just tax. Else we could have talked about income tax, GST, and still been enough for the next a few hours. But you also have allied laws, because that's how it's become. I was at a conference where we were talking about investigations, and you have the income tax angle, you have the customs angle, you have the FEMA angle, you have the enforcement directorate angle, you have the Benami angle, you have angles that I definitely cannot even conceive of. Once an investigation ensnares you, then you need experts like Mr. Dinesh Patwari and Sandeep Bhalla to help you. So God forbid that you may not be ensnared or engulfed by any investigations, but that's the order of the day. That's what that's not what the doctor is ordering, but that's the current reality. That's the present status. And in fact, when the Supreme Court currently is hearing a case about the arrest powers under GST law, and that those have been challenged, and the Supreme Court too is trying to balance between how do you to crack down on evasion, and therefore protect the powers of the enforcement, the arrest powers of the enforcement agencies, the investigative agencies, and at the same time, how do you also ensure that liberty is not breached? So this balance between investigation, stroke enforcement, and liberty, personal liberty we are talking of, it's a very fine balance. And just like any other age, the pendulum keeps swinging, like we said, between tax evasion and tax planning. From Westminster to McDowell, then from Azadi, then you have the MFN. So the pendulum always keeps swinging. Today, the pendulum is firmly in favor of the investigative agencies. The moment the investigative agencies start an investigation, issue you a summons, you're in their you're in their cabin till maybe midnight, or even more if you're unlucky. They come and seize your laptops, they come and seize your mobiles, they want to see your WhatsApp chats, they want to see your emails. What do you do? And I think there are so many angles to it that our speakers for the day will cover over the next 60 minutes or so. I hope I have not spooked you all, but trust me, if you all have been covering Tax Sutra's coverage of all the Supreme Court cases, you would have seen that there is so much focus on investigations, and ED and PMLA and so on and so forth. On that note, let me quickly introduce our speakers for the day. First, Mr. Dinesh Patwari is a senior advisor with Dhruva Advisors. He's a distinguished IRS officer and renowned expert who boasts of a remarkable career of 36 years in taxation, finance, and investigations, having served as the former Principal Chief Commissioner of Income Tax and Director General of Income Tax Investigations. He is an expert in the field of search and investigations under tax and allied laws. He is also an accomplished author and alumnus of IIM Ahmedabad. A pleasure to have you on board for this webinar, Dinesh sir. Our second speaker, Mr. Sandeep Bhalla, a senior partner with Dhruva Advisors. Sandeep is a recognized tax practitioner with over 30 years dealing in tax controversies, tax litigation, and dispute settlement. He has varied experience in representing clients in some of the largest controversies in income tax, black money, Benami transactions, and money laundering laws. Sandeep has been a part of various committees of leading tax practitioners in the country. Leading MNC tax case, and we quickly sent out a breaking news, and I got a message that, oh, Sandeep was involved in this matter. So if there is a big controversy, a big tax controversy, a big tax litigation, the odds are slightly favoring that Sandeep would be involved in that matter. So Sandeep, on that note, I hand it over to you. A quick hygiene note for all the participants. Please type in your questions in the Q&A box, not the chat box, and we'll try to take in as many questions as possible towards the end of this webinar. Keep your comments and feedback coming. Dinesh sir, Sandeep, a pleasure to be collaborating for this webinar. Over to you, Sandeep.
Thank you, Arun. Thank you for that introduction. I don't know whether the odds are that I would be involved, but yes, it is always good to be in large controversies on tax. So essentially today, what we intend to do is to we intend to in next 40 minutes or so take you through the presentation, various aspects of investigation, and post that we'll have about 15 minutes or so for Q&A. That's the plan. We would want to take as many questions as we can. Of course, if there are questions which people can directly email and ask later, that's the format of this webinar. So essentially here we are talking about the approach of the government. The approach of the government has been to honor the honest, and we've seen several measures, whether it was on faceless assessment, whether it is on taxpayers charter being brought into the statute itself on one side, and we are also seeing that the same government also wants to punish the evaders. So while on one side they want to honor the honest, at the same time they also want to punish the evaders. And when I say punish the evaders, we are seeing several initiatives being taken by the government, whether it is specialized investigation cells, whether it is tracking the black money overseas, whether it is access to data, or it is forensic labs being set up by the tax department. So all of this we are seeing happening at the same time in our age. Now we have recently learned that there is a proposal for tax authorities being able to access the national grid data. With still a proposal, a lot of data yet to come, but that would mean that a lot of information about a taxpayer would be directly available with the tax authorities, and they would not necessarily have to look at sourcing data from other agencies. So that's one very big step which the government has taken. There are specialized investigation units, whether it is INCI, the intelligence and criminal investigation as they call it, which analyzes data which comes from foreign jurisdictions, or it is the Benami Property unit, or it is foreign assets units. These are very specialized cells which are being set up by government now in order to enable these officers to analyze and collect data in respect of these, wherever they see there is an evasion. So we spoke about sourcing of data. So this is 6 of these are items where data or agencies where the data is being sourced from, and these are not the only 6 agencies. There are several other agencies from which data comes. This is primarily the focus of the domestic data collection, and besides this there is overseas collection of data also. Sir, would you want to just briefly tell us about the regional economic intelligence units?
Yes, Sandeep. Under the aegis of Central Economic Intelligence Bureau, CEIB, which is a central agency in Delhi, there are 30 regional economic intelligence units at different division, different levels, which are headed or the convener of those agencies or other REICs are DG IT investigation, where DG is there, or GST or income tax principal CC, whoever is the senior most there. So this under them, every 3 months, the convener level meetings are held and exchange of information take place. So there are 20 to 25 law enforcement agencies involved in that. They exchange information, they do follow up, and they even identify what has happened to the previously supplied information. So there is a continuous monitoring, and there is a nodal officers level meeting also every quarter. So that way, the exchange of information in the present time under the different LEAs, law enforcement agencies, have become systematized.
So in fact, one is exchange of information, as a source of collection of data. The other is also that, a lot of data now as a result of compliances, whether it is annual information reports or TIS reports or SFT specialized, specific financial transaction report, their data is automatically being sent or shared with the tax department. So that's another aspect which results in collection of data. What we've heard, and sir, you could throw a bit of light on this. There are algorithms which are being used by the department in order to analyze whether the data which is collected as a result of whether it is these specific data inputs or it is as a result of social media data collection.
Yes.
And their income declarations, are they in some sense matching or not?
Yes, there is a concept of 360-degree profiling. So each taxpayer, all collected and gathered informations are analyzed by artificial intelligence, and based on that, a profile is created for everyone, and that is the basis for any investigation by the tax department. It is not like hit and trial method. The department is basically collecting, gathering information, is analyzing the things by AI, and based on the findings of AI, the further investigation, scrutiny, or whatever is required to be done is done. So 360-degree profiling is a key thing now.
I also, in our experience, we've seen that a department also is able to get data in respect of residency, in terms of who is resident in India for how many days, which essentially earlier the department used to rely on outside data or on returns being filed by the taxpayer. Now that data is being collected independently and matched with the return. They are able to collect data. Of course, we spoke about algorithms being used. We spoke about agencies through which the data comes. So there is a lot of both collection of data and analysis of data. And it is unlikely that a data which has any digital evidence is not in not before the tax authority. So essentially, both collection and analysis is happening online as we speak.
Yeah.
And here we are talking about domestic data. There is also international data. So whether it is FATCA returns or it is automatic exchange of information, which the government has signed with 96 jurisdictions already, where the common reporting standards are being followed and data is being collected, or it is specific data requests by the FTNTR. There is a huge collection of data there also, and we've seen, sir, in our past experiences as to what has happened with HSBC leaks or Panama leaks or all of those. So essentially, that is another big a source of data today. It's become a big source of data. This, here we've also seen that what happens as a post collection of data. There is an analysis which is carried out, as a result of which there is a meaningful correlation of the data, whether it is seized data, collected data, or other data which is coming, and that correlation with the tax returns or with the other financial information which is available with the tax authorities. CBDT is continuously scrutinizing newer areas for plugging tax evasion, and this is a continuous thing which is happening, day in and out. We are seeing that the tax officer or the investigating officers or the INCIS, they call it, are far more trained. They have standard operating procedures. They have manuals to go back to references as to or guidance available to them, so that both the tools can be used in an effective way and a more meaningful data results out of this results out of the investigation.
Right.
We have also seen that the tools which they use at the time when the search is carried out,
Right.
these tools can throw up results like not before. So we've seen situations where where a particular investigator was not using cash as a language, was using other things like, mithai boxes or things like those. And we've seen they have tools by virtue of which that tool in fraction of a minute, they could actually go back and say that, oh, this term has been used 42 times in one device and 53 times in another device. So essentially, for them to be able to correlate that data with seized material or with the financial transactions very, very quick.
Yes.
Sir, I would like you to look at this life cycle of a search in current age.
Right, I'll do that. So what I will be doing in next few minutes, I will be taking the audience to how the searches are planned, how those are executed, and what is done during the course of search, how the digital data are analyzed, collected, how the forensic is done, recording of statement takes place, and then finally, appraisal report is prepared by the investigation wing, which is sent to the assessment wing, and that is where the assessment, etc., takes place. So, to begin with, how to identify a case for search? That is a very, very important thing, because as I told earlier, that department with limited resources will not waste its time and energy. It will go where the concealment or undisclosed income lies. So for that purpose, they have to use many tools, including electronic surveillance, even social media reporting. They can analyze the records of the taxpayer. If the large claim of deduction or exemption is made, like 500 crore deduction or exemption is claimed, which requires certain conditions to be fulfilled. Normally, we think that those can be analyzed in office by the assessing officer during scrutiny assessment. But we have seen practically that that doesn't happen, because in office, people can bring all kinds of evidences unless those are subjected to the physical verification on the site. No meaningful outcome will come. So even for the verification of large claims, in my time also, we have conducted many searches to verify large claim of deductions. And in one of the major search, we could find that more than 800 crore claim of a deduction was made under 80 without fulfilling all the conditions. So you need to see whether there is any trigger on account of claim of large deduction, large exemptions. Then if the creditors are very high in your books, like you have purchases of 500 crores and your creditors are also to the extent of 500 crore, that means you are not paying for purchases for 1 year. If the industry trend is 2 months payment or 1 month payment, then definitely it is a clear indicator that some of your, most of your creditors are bogus, or those are subjected to some scrutiny. So these are many such triggers which can lead to investigation or income tax searches. Apart from these, the informant reward scheme is also there, where some insiders or some such people who have direct access to the information, they also come and supply information to the tax department. Then, as Sandeep has earlier mentioned, that there are inside the domestic information, international information. So those keep coming regularly, and based on that also, the cases are identified. Once identification is done, then assessing that when concerned ADIT, he prepares the list of premises to be covered, and then he puts up the satisfaction to the additional DI, then PDIT, and finally DGIT signature is obtained. Income tax searches are not done at the lower level. This is, in fact, probably the only agency where DGIT personally satisfies himself before authorizing any search. So normally, frivolous searches are very rare, doesn't happen. It will always have some or the other clear objective. Once all these things are done, then the authorization is to be signed by PDIT. Once search is sanctioned, the authorization is to be signed by PDIT. And in the case of consequential search action, like in 20 premises, search has been conducted, but later on, they come to know that maybe 5 more premises are required to be covered, connected with that. In that situation, additional DI also can issue authorization search warrant. One thing is very important, like each premise need one search warrant. Even if on that premise, 5 companies or concerns are running, one warrant is enough. 5 names can be mentioned in the warrant. Form number 45 is the form for authorization in this case. And if more than like one concern or one company has 10 premises, then you need 10 separate warrants for each premise. Even bank locker requires one warrant. So this is how the warrants of authorizations are issued. Once it goes, the search team goes there, they will execute the warrant on the key person. If a MD, CEO, or those kind of people are there, it will be executed on them. Otherwise, whoever is senior most KMP, it is executed on them. And then, with the presence of 2 witnesses, the search takes place. And during the search, they do physical verification, physical search of all the places, and they take out the digital evidences also. And in that, if the data is on the cloud, then they have to basically familiarize themselves. Then experts are called. They do basically hash value is generated, and that is basically required so that there is no scope of tampering of the data at later stage, and those data will remain intact and will have a full evidentiary value. So this is how physical data as well as electronic data are collected, and then comes the recording of statement. Because there are 2 distinct purposes of any income tax searches. First purpose is to gather evidence that they do a physical search and take the imaging, etc. of electronic devices. But recording of statement is very, very important because on the spot examination will give the truth. So here, in fact, we'll be talking about it, that what kind of statements are recorded and what precaution one should take while giving a proper statement. So this we'll be discussing in detail also later. And then with all the investigations which are generally done within 3 to 4 months, appraisal report is prepared. And that appraisal report is basically a confidential document prepared by the investigation wing to guide the assessing officer. And that is based on all the assets, documents, electronic devices seized, analysis of that, and then basic working of concealed income on particular issues. It may not be very extensive, exhaustive, but definitely some clear aspects are covered in that. And then based on that, assessments are done. So if you see the timeline, research investigation usually takes up to say 1 month to 6 months time. But I have seen the cases where searches have taken place within 7 days of identifying the target. So that may not be again necessary that you need to wait for that long. If your preparation is done, you can mount action on that.
So there are sometimes what we see that there are search warrants which are issued and the search party actually carries with themselves several blank search warrants also.
No, Sandeep, that is not possible because search warrant need to be filled completely. In fact, if the name is not correctly written, if full name is not there, a company's name is not there, or something else is there, then it can vitiate the search action. So I don't think that is possible. At least I have not seen in last many years.
But we've seen sometimes that search warrants, search parties do carry blank, and that could be an area where one should get that thing recorded during the preliminary statement itself if they find that the search warrant was a blank and was filled at the site at that point of time.
Yes. And if they notice something abnormal or what you are talking, then I think Panchanama is prepared at the end of the search action at each premise. In the Panchanama, I think these facts can be noted, witness will also sign that. So I don't think this kind of irregularity is happening now, but yes, if it happens, then it is our job to stop it.
Sir, one other question which arises most time is, whether at the time when the search is being carried out, can a chartered accountant or the representative of the SSC be present? And this is a very controversial question in some sense because the department never wants it and the SSC always wants.
No, actually, Sandeep, it is not a matter of right of the taxpayer to get the assistance of a chartered accountant or a lawyer at the time of search. But if the tax department wants that may be helpful for some explanation, then they may call. But assessee per se cannot insist that I need chartered accountant, because actually such actions are not the final action. These are basically gathering the evidence and examination. Once that is done, then subsequently they are going to get an opportunity during assessment. So at that stage, the chartered accountants are allowed. They are fully authorized to represent, give submissions and everything.
Only one question: can a chartered accountant, therefore, and this remains, can a chartered accountant remain as a witness at the time when the search and not interfere with the proceedings? Many a times we see that the statements which get recorded at the time of the search, it takes days and weeks to get copies of those statements, and therefore delays the whole process of preparation for the subsequent proceedings. So can a chartered accountant remain as an expert is a matter of to be seen at every search party may take a different view.
Something that is not possible, because it is very clearly mentioned that the witness has to be independent. There are supposed to be 2 witnesses in all searches, and both the witnesses have to be independent. They can neither be relative, they cannot be employee, and not chartered accountant, because chartered accountant is associated with the taxpayer in some way or the other. So that is not permitted actually.
Sir, thank you for that clarification. I think there is a lot of questions about this, and we'll see later in the.
Yes, definitely. We will welcome that.
Yeah. So the next question is, and as a result, you spoke about the process of the search, the life cycle of the search. And one important thing is your statement which gets recorded. And the statement, when it gets recorded, what do promoters say in the and there are 2 times when these statements get recorded. One is at the time when the search is happening, which is the preliminary statement, and subsequently a final statement which gets recorded. And this happens both in search as also in surveys. That the survey, there may not be a final statement, but yes, there is a preliminary statement. And this question, which comes and haunts every promoter, every investigative, is what statement do I give at the time, at the preliminary stage itself? There are situations we've seen in our experience where promoters, in their zeal to get over this whole search, try and give statements as quickly as possible, not verifying whether the data which is being given or the statement which is given correlates to the data, and later becomes difficulty for them to either retract those statements or those statements come back to haunt them during the course of the assessment. So this is a very, very common thing which we see, that is it then not admissible that unless they have verified the data, they should take time to verify rather than be in an over enthusiasm to give a statement, because even after giving the statement or giving that declaration, essentially the search doesn't get over as a result there. Yes. It has to take its life cycle. It has to, if howsoever they may want, it does not get wished away.
Yes, Sandeep, I agree with you that the statement is very, very important part of any such action. And one should be very careful. Taxpayer has to be very, very careful while admitting something, giving the statement, which will be used against him later on. So as far as the preliminary statement is concerned, preliminary statement is very basic thing where they will ask, what is your basic concerns, bank account details, locals, and those kind of basic things where nothing much need to be taken. But wherever the final statement is concerned, that is recorded under section 132(4). And believe me, the statement given under 132(4) has independent evidentiary value. It need not be corroborated with any other independent evidence, still it has evidentiary value. So there had been tendency earlier that the tax team would in their enthusiasm ask the taxpayer to declare something under 132(4). But in 2003, Honorable Finance Minister committed in Parliament that there will not be any coercion or pressure for giving disclosures. So instruction of CBDT has come in 2003, March 2003, and after that, it is made very clear to the tax department that if assessee voluntarily wants to give any disclosure, it's all right. Otherwise, tax authorities cannot force somebody to give disclosure. And if it is without any evidence, then that is not absolutely correct. So whenever there is any pressure for any 134 disclosure, I would recommend that one should make the tax authorities or team know that this instruction of severity exists and they will be actually transgressing their jurisdiction if they will be forcing the taxpayer to give the disclosure unnecessarily without any evidence. Here actually there are two advantages of disclosure. One advantage is the penalty, which is normally 60% in the such cases, gets reduced to 30%. And other advantage is if you admit something, there is no incentive for the tax team to make further investigation. So to reduce the intensity of investigation, it can help. But then the counter of it is that it will be sticking to you. Whatever disclosure you make, the assessment will be framed on that basis, and even the judicial forum will accept that. The question comes here, can retraction be accepted by the department? Because if you have given statement in your over enthusiasm, under pressure or whatever, the situation during the search might be, can it be retracted later? In practical sense, I think something you may be knowing, in majority of the cases, retractions are filed in routine manner. All those retractions will not be really acceptable. Only those retractions which are on facts contrary to what statement is given, those retractions will be valid, and that too, those should be made within a very reasonable time, 10-15 days of getting the statement.
Yeah, we have later in this presentation, how the courts have been seeing retractions and how they see when all of those aspects of when the retraction is made and whether it is supported, etc.
Right.
One question, sir, which comes up is whether the investigation team, when it visits the investigating, whether they have a target number in their mind. And that's question one. And the other question, which which we have seen more in practice now, that in good old days, the tax search used to happen on day 1, on day 2, they would take statement, on day 3, they would wrap up, and day 4, they would go away. Now we see that mostly the tax searches continue for 7 days, 8 days, 9 days, 10 days, and it is really so taxing on the taxpayer to continue, and they somehow want the taxpayer in that whole pressure wants this whole thing to go away. Okay. Unfortunately, not too much in his hands, but they want to is there a protocol as to how many days they can be there?
There are two questions you raised, Sandeep. One is, what is the target number for investigation team? I think the plain and straight answer is there is no target number as such, but for any agency to work, they have limited resources. And if they are going to conduct a search at some group or some places, 20-30 search parties will enroll. So obviously there has to be outcome. May not be pressure for disclosure, but at least this should result in detection. Detection means gathering evidence. Gathering evidence, nobody can force anybody. It has to be there, existing in the place. So for that, definitely target is there. And my own experience is that when we were authorizing searches, we were ensuring that at least 50% of what is in our mind is already available on paper or in some form, so that no search will be flawed. And because your resources are limited, you can't really vest it by hit and try method. So that is one thing, but definitely there is without target also, they are going focused. Already a lot of intelligence is gathered, so result is always there. As regards your question of 6, 7 days, 8 days, during when I was ADI in 1991 too, that time searches were continuing from 24 hours actually, from morning till it concluded. So during night hours also searches were continuing. But later on, there was some retraction on this ground that my statement was recorded at 3 a.m. or 4 a.m. I was literally not in awake condition. So with that actually in mind, they are now actually temporarily winding up in the night. Search team remains there, but then there is no action taking place between the night hours, late night hours. So that is how it gets prolonged. But most of the places it gets concluded in 2-3 days. Somewhere where the documents are quite voluminous, lot of analysis is required to be done. There it may go for 3, 4, 5 days, but I don't think 7, 8 days, 10 days, in my knowledge, may not be there.
Well, we've started seeing some of this happening now. So the other thing is, yes, we spoke about evidences which are found during the course of the search, in today's time, most of these evidences are in digital form, not really in the physical form. While there may be some in the physical form, but we see most of the evidences are. And the question which arises is whether these are evidences which are in physical form, or sorry, digital form. They are, admissible evidences, and at what level is this admissible? So the first point is whatever is directly available within the device, electronic device, which is found at the premises, and those are primary evidences. They are admissible as evidences, and they do not even require a 65 B certificate, as we call it, satisfy the conditions of 65B of the Evidence Act. So they are directly admissible as evidence in respect of those items which are on either on servers or on cloud locations, and which are downloaded to a device. They are considered as secondary evidences by the courts, and those evidences do require a certification of 65B to be there for them to be admitted as evidences. Question which arises is, what are assessee's rights at the time when imaging is carried out? And there are set rules. There are manuals which the board has issued. There are personal information which the department should not access and should be kept set aside. And it is only the financial data which should be analyzed and should be used for the purpose of analyzing data. There could be several personal chats which are available, and that has to be kept aside. There are manuals, there are clear guidance available from the board in respect thereof, so that our assessee's rights and assessees should be able to insist on those things not being copied, not being used, or even shared with other agencies. But that's one area which does concern a lot of multinationals in particular, as to their employees' rights on their personal data. So that's one. The question is, in current times, we've seen a lot of WhatsApp chats, emails, and a lot of those kind of data which is available at the time of the search, and what happens as a result of those data being there. So we've taken a couple of case studies here. One is about WhatsApp chat which is found in the premises of a person, and this chat could be either between that person, means the promoter, or any of their two employees, and whether the information which is there on those chats can have an evidentiary value, and can it result in an addition or adjustment in the income.
Yes, that is having evidentiary value, because those are the direct conversation between the key person and the key employees. So that it
I would agree to that, sir. I would agree to that they does have a evidentiary value. The other point which arises is whether if there is chat which is between two employees of, say, A organization, and it is talking about a person B, which is a third organization, whether that chat can also be considered as an evidence against B. And that's where a real fight comes as to whether between the taxpayer and the department, as to whether the adjustment to income can be made in the hands of B as a result of something which is found in premises of A.
So actually here the question comes whether it is supported, this WhatsApp chat is also supported by some other evidence, some other facts, material in those cases. If the transactions are there, and like there is a supply of goods by A to B, and that is officially 1,000 rupees, and 300 or 500 rupees is taken on, and that is mentioned in that WhatsApp chat. then definitely it will also be used because that is relating to the transaction which is already there in the records.
Sir,
And that is underreported.
Sir, here the point is that there are two employees of A who are talking amongst themselves that I have received so much money from B. In B's digital devices, nothing like this is found. Can an adjustment be made in the hands of B? And many times we see that the reassessment notices are issued to B. Also, of course, A will have to deal with it, but it also gets issued to B. And at that point of time, B will need to be able to ask for documents based on which this reassessment notice has been issued. They can even ask for if this results in a proposal for an adjustment to the income, they can ask for these employees being counter-examined or examined.
Yes, sir. Examination can be done. The cross-examination also can be done, and based on that, the finding can be taken.
So the other very interesting thing which we see is sometimes these chats, WhatsApp chats or messages are deleted. And at the point of time when the search party actually comes, they retrieve it from the cloud.
Yes.
And that point of time, whether it still remains as a primary evidence or it becomes a secondary evidence, in accordance with the provisions, currently it becomes a secondary evidence because it is downloaded from
the 69B procedure.
65B procedure.
65B procedure has to be followed.
Sir, we have also seen that in emails, and that's the next question. We've seen that a lot of email data, which is imaged at the time when the search is carried out, is either selectively read or used against the taxpayer. And I can give you instances where I'm saying selectively reading. Suppose there is a tax opinion which is being taken and tax expert is giving an opinion to say so and so could result in an addition or could have adverse consequences. Now this is a opinion which is being taken. Not necessarily that transaction has been carried out, but as a result thereof, the tax search parties sometimes take a position to say that yes, you were trying to you were trying to evade tax as a result of this.
Yeah, actually, if the transaction is executed based on these advices and that is substantiating the outcome, then probably these will be relevant. So what we should do is the emails should be treated as authentic document, and we should be careful while writing in the email. It should not be casually written. If that is done, then I think the task is done. Next.
So other thing is some post statements getting recorded. What happens as a result of as a result of the appraisal note which gets prepared and sent to the assessing officer. One question which always comes is whatever
normal level rate tax or higher rate tax.
Yeah, and therefore what is an undisclosed business receipt? Whether it should be taxed as a normal business income under 28 to 44 or should it be taxed under 68, 69 or those provisions?
Okay.
So that becomes a.
Actually, Sandeep, here what is important is like if we can correlate with the data or evidence with the business income or business expense directly. If that is done, and in statement also we have clarified, then most probably such income will be treated in the normal business. But if we remain silent or certain thing, then it will be going to the undisclosed income part, that is 68, 69 ABC, and there the higher rate will be applicable.
And the other question which sir comes always is can the department extrapolate as to something has been found as a modus operandi being done by say an SSC for a day or a 2 or a week. Can that be extrapolated for the entire year or earlier years, or how many years can they go back? So extrapolation is it permitted?
Actually, a famous decision of Honorable Supreme Court Yusuf Ali is there on that, and that allowed the sales-tax department to extrapolate the sales if the facts remain same. So here also, if the facts are same, but not based on the 2-3 days data, it has to be for a reasonable period of time, and the taxpayer should not, if he is not able to distinguish between the previous period and for which the data is found, then probably extrapolation is permitted. But otherwise, for the very brief period of data, and that too not correlatable with the earlier period, that may not be possible. Next.
Courts have, time and again held that extrapolation should not be carried out, but yes, jury is out to say on this. We have a case study here, and this is very typical. When we see a search party comes and finds that there is an undisclosed income, and we put some numbers here, undisclosed income of 1 crore. There is an unaccounted expenses of 70 lakhs. They found cash of 30, and they found, let's assume for a moment that they found digital evidences for all of this. The total additions which are proposed is usually 2 crore. And the question which comes up is, what should be the real income which should be taxed? Should it be 1 crore? Should it be 30 lakhs?
Telescoping is permitted actually in such cases where there is a correlation between income and application of the income. So both the side cannot be added. So in that situation, the telescoping permitted.
And if the unaccounted expenses are, if it is more than the income, then of course the peak
The
balance.
other side will be, yes. Okay. I think.
Yeah, penalties, we briefly spoke about, ranges from 30% to 200%, and therefore that's very important to be seen. These are basic provisions of penalties. We're not going to spend too much time on this, so let's move on. Yeah, these are significant issues which have been considered by the judiciary at times, at various times, whether it is additions based on dumb documents, they have to be deleted, admissions on of unaccounted income without being related with the evidences found during the course of the search, whether it can still be unexplained income. Again, there are circumstances where retractions have been held to be accepted by the courts, even if they were not accepted at the assessment stages. And we have also found that validity of search itself has been under challenge. In a very recent case before Chennai High Court, it was actually the validity of search which was questioned, and Chennai High Court was pleased to say that the search itself was not valid, and therefore the assessments were not upheld.
But the evidences used can be, evidences gathered can be used even in case of illegal search.
Yeah, and the best part is the evidences which are gathered during even in illegal search can be used by other agencies also.
Yeah. So I will be basically briefly covering the 3 acts: black money, Benami, and PMLA, very briefly, because these subjects are so vast that even 3-4 hour seminar for each will be very small. So just a glimpse of that I will be giving. Regarding the Black Money Act, actually right from 2010, when the HSBC leak and then thereafter many leaks have come. So it was very clear that the assets and income stays abroad will have to be taxed in the domestic jurisdiction. And for that, 2015-16, that scheme has come, and then thereafter Black Money Act came. So in this, actually, a lot of reporting is happening under FATCA, CRS, that Sandeep has told in the beginning itself. And based on that, now all resident, non-resident Indians will be getting the notices, are getting notices actually from the department, because the data is culled and distributed among the that for the black money unit.
Sir, one question which arises, always comes in this black money is, FA schedule not being filled by the taxpayer in the return, and does that automatically leads to a penalty? Now we've seen that while the provisions do say, section 42 does say about levy of penalty if the FA schedule is not filled in. The question which arises, even if this income is fully disclosed, so there are situations where a resident has sent money from his known sources of income under an LRS scheme. The 15 CACB has been filed with the department, so that is fully disclosed to the department, but he's omitted to fill a FA schedule. So should a penalty be sustained on this? I would say the jury is still out. One will have to see how the
prosecution is also there. Section 50 is there for not reporting the foreign asset.
Yeah,
but it is not just penalty. In some cases, prosecutions are also filed under Black Money Act. So basically, we can say that the tax rate of 30% and 90% of penalty and there is a penalty of non-reporting also, as well as prosecution subsequently, and no credit, etc. is given in this. So it is just a snapshot of Black Money Act, but definitely in many cases, or particularly which are having the foreign transactions, foreign assets, foreign income, this act and the compliance of this act, I think one has to be very, very careful. Otherwise, it will lead to very severe consequences.
Similarly, I would say, black money was not the only thing. PMLA actually takes the lead. All the predicated offences, which are listed in the schedule.
Yeah, A, B, C. There are 30 acts actually, and in those 30 acts, some sections of IPC, then Prevention of Corruption Acts, even SEBI Act, many acts are there. So whatever is done, offence is done, and any proceed of crime, any money generated from those crimes are considered under PMLA, and there are the words used there is concealment, possession, acquisition, use, and projecting or claiming proceeds of crime. So these will bring in that, and then
So the question which comes mostly is, in a normal course of business, if suppose somebody sold a car to somebody,
right,
and the person who's paid this for the car has brought in money from proceeds of crime, whether that money can still be seized when this was done in the ordinary course of business, and the courts have held that if it was done in the normal course of business without knowledge of it being proceeds of crime, then it should not result in the seizure of this cash.
But actually, in the initial stage, it will be done. Seizure will be done because
Courts would.
it is directly flowing from the proceed of crime. That is how it will happen.
So the next point is on Benami loss snapshot again. We have separate BPU units. We spoke about BPU units right in the beginning of this presentation, and we've seen umpteen number of cases, including the famous Shah Rukh Khan case, where a farmhouse was held to be Benami. This
In
is
fact, Sandeep, in many searches we have conducted, and thousands of acres of land we found, those were kept in the Benami names. Documents were found in possession of the assessee, and even the employees were not aware that the properties were purchased in their name. So all these are considered in the Benami category. Civil consequences are basically confiscation after provisional attachment initially. Once it is finally concluded by a executive authority tribunal, then those are confiscated. And then criminal proceeding 1 to 7 year imprisonment and fine. So this is also a very serious thing.
So two reasons why we see a lot of property in Benami, and primarily one was the Land Ceiling Act, which used to be there, and the other is people who are non-agriculturists buying agricultural land, and that's an area which has given a
So
shot in the arm.
the good news is that any transaction done prior to 1st November 2016 will not be considered under Benami as held by Honorable Supreme Court.
Yeah.
So that way, anything done subsequently only will be covered.
Yeah.
I think we have covered this.
Yeah, we've covered the interplay between the but one only point is there are multiple implications of the same data both in under the income tax and other allied laws. Supreme Court actually issued guidelines in respect of search of devices. One was whether the devices can be seized, and they actually said that the electronic devices should not be seized unless it is absolutely necessary, and what happens to the data. So there are these guidelines which are kind of issued as a result of
These are actually some of the general guidelines for other laws, but in Income Tax Act and maybe PMLA, etc., there is a specific provisions. So probably already these are considered and being used.
So what are the key takeaways as a result of this? And this is probably our last slide.
Absolutely, very, very important slide.
Yeah. So regular diagnostic checks to be carried out. A lot of data. Sometimes we actually just ignore data. It keeps lying. In digital form in multiple locations, and then as much data is found at the time of the search or any investigation, you will have to go ahead and explain all of that data. So it is important that like we do in physical, we trash the data which is not relevant or for after a certain number of years. Similar things should also be done for digital data. Similarly, for housekeeping, measures should be carried out, deleting unknown, unwanted files which are, and not necessarily I would say that deletion results in deletion, and it's really some simple housekeeping steps which need to be carried out.
And regarding this email, actually, you need to have explanation for everything you are sending. Like it should not be casual, as Sandeep mentioned earlier, that can be used against you. Similarly, if you have an asset belonging to somebody, you need to establish the ownership. If
So this happens many a time. We've seen actual practical cases where somebody was visiting somewhere and left his laptop, and subsequent next day itself the premises where it was left was searched, and he ended up explaining every entry in the laptop, and then therefore one has to be very careful about it.
4A provision must have come in.
Yes.
So,
The other thing is most of the KMPs are not familiar with the process and their rights, and as a result, there are a lot of difficulties arise as a result thereof.
So I think nowadays searches are taking place not only for getting the unaccounted assets, but these are conducted for gathering evidences also for claims and other things. So it is better that KMPs and promoters should get familiarized with the search processes and also the rights and duties. That will be helpful to them.
Well, that's all from us. And Arun, if there are any questions.
There are several. There are almost 11 questions. Let me take a few at least. Yeah. This is from Pankaj Mundada. He says, department may go extra mile in collecting information during search. My question is, what is the sanctity of such information in light of laws? We saw cases where department lost on legality under law of such data.
So department can lose on legality, but again that 65B of the Evidence Act actually comes into play, and once a part investigative is being served, you really cannot say that this is the stop for department and they cannot go beyond a particular point in terms of collecting data. They absolutely can go. They have full right to go and seize whatever data they can seize.
Because it is not the right of the taxpayer to question.
Even if I would say at later point of time, they may question the legality of search on different count, but data collection they cannot.
Right.
This is from Mr. Jairam. He says, can the assessee can the assessed demand a copy of the search warrant and satisfaction memo?
No, that is not possible. And in fact, in 2017, another amendment has come by virtue of it. Even the commissioner appeal and tribunal cannot ask for copy of satisfaction and search warrant. It is only executed. It will be shown to them and they can sign on. They're supposed to sign on that. That's all. Only High Court under the jurisdiction can call for satisfaction and warrant.
Only thing one has to be careful that that warrants are not blank, and if they are blank, one can get it recorded in the statement.
And their name should be there in the warrant. They should at least see premise and the name is clearly written. These are the requirement, and they can identify the search team who has come, whether their names are there or not in the warrant of authorization.
Yeah.
All these basic precautions they should take.
We have two questions more or less on the same point from Kisan Dole. Can the assessee insist for a copy of statement recorded by officer immediately upon signing the same by the assessee? If not, then what is the legal recourse?
So actually, the answer to the question is that the statement copy is to be given at the time of using that statement against the assessee. And assessing officer only uses that against the assessee. Investigation wing only prepares the appraisal report. So right actually comes at the stage of assessment, not before that. As far as the statement is concerned, copy of the statement, they can very well immediately after search, they can note down the basics and the gist of what was asked and what was stated. That will be helpful to the counsels in preparing the further strategy. So that is the only thing they can do.
Perfect. The next one is from, I'll take a couple more. Abhishek Gupta. Yes, sir. Can the authorities pressurize for recording of statement from relatives, outsiders who are sitting in the premises during search?
Visited the premise during search.
Yeah.
So they can be very well, because ultimately somebody is coming to the premise, then what is the purpose for that? Recording that purpose, why you have come, what kind of dealings and transactions you have. So for that purpose, a statement can be recorded. There is no issue in that.
Perfect. Harshita Agarwal has a question. Can we ask the department for the materials seized and information collected during search?
Yes, they can ask. I think it is provided also.
Yeah, you can ask for it. There's a right. You can make an official application,
Yes.
ask for it, and it is usually provided.
I have one more question exactly left. No, there are two more now. So should we stop here or you want to take one more?
Yeah, we can take.
Okay, we'll take one more. Prateek Jain, in case of bogus invoices, suppose there is an allegation that 20 out of 100 invoices are bogus, whether penalty provisions would apply to 20 invoices separately or all 20 cases considered as single and penalty accordingly levied. It's a bit confusing.
So it is penalty is usually on the quantum, and if there is a wrong entry, there is a specific provision, which talks of a wrong entry in the books of account resulting into a penalty which could be equal to the amount of this bogus invoice itself. This actually leads us to a very interesting question that if there is a wrongful entry in the books of account which does not result in tax evasion necessarily. So somebody has increased his sale. So that does not result in tax evasion, but that also can be added under this provision. So the entire amount of wrongful entry is penalty amount equal to that can be added.
Okay. Dushyant Maharishi, this is the last. Sir, what remedy is available when search is conducted after sunset hours and also at an advocate consultant's office? A little bit, I think, is provided by the Gujarat High Court on that lawyer thing. Though the attorney-client privilege was a point was pleaded, but I think somewhere the Gujarat High Court also, while laying down the judgment upholding the search, they said that that you can't completely take away the liberties as well. But anyways, I think there are guidelines, sir, right? So for this, that the department also, there are some guidelines they have to go by. You can't completely trample upon personal liberty of the individual or the client.
Yeah, that is there. But actually, searches can be conducted 24/7. There is absolutely no restriction. 4 hours of the night, early morning, Sunday. There is no, only in survey actually, there is a time limit where one can go into business hours, during business hours only, and during sunset and sunrise.
And after sunrise and before sunset.
Yeah.
And then the other question which arises is only at the business premises.
Yeah.
Yes, that would be all.
Yeah, Sandeep and Dinesh, sir, what a pleasure hosting this webinar. In fact, we have quite a few comments saying that they really loved this session. I'll just read a couple of them. One says it's a very good session. I would request the organizers to share the copy of the presentation. A couple more feedbacks as well, saying that they really like the session. Thank you for that feedback. All credit goes to the Dhruva team, and of course led by their senior partner Sandeep Bhalla and senior advisor Mr. Dinesh Patwari. Many thanks once again for joining in this webinar. We had a full house today, a Friday evening, when we are competing with the IPL match just an hour away. Sandeep, which team are you supporting?
I always, my team is actually out now. Mumbai Indians.
Which one?
Mumbai Indians.
Mumbai is out. Oh dear. I won't ask about Dinesh sir. नहीं तो मेरा investigation शुरू हो जाएगा. Perfect.
RCB is also out, I believe.
RCB is almost out. Almost. They are not yet, but on the verge of it. But on that note, let's all say TGIF. Thank God it's Friday. We all, just wait for this Friday evening to come. Yeah, I did say on a webinar yesterday also that I've been watching this legal series, Mamla Legal Hai. So if you're looking for some legal comedy, please watch Mamla Legal Hai. It'll be a good way to de-stress yourself over the weekend. On that note, thank you once again from the Tax Sutra and Dhruva team. Hope you had a good webinar. Thank you once again.
Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you.